Contrast, especially the light versus shadow contrast, is a cornerstone of good cinematic lighting. It is just really pleasing when the image goes zebra, light to light to dark, so on and so forth. Think of it as pools of light infusing our composition with visual interest, essentially breaking up monotony. It can be, I don't know, the sun rays streaming through the holes in the roof, creating the pools of light, or just anything of that sort with a zebra in mind. In other words, let there be the sunlight as a higher contrast seasoning on top of our 3-point lighting base. I'm going to show a few different methods for creating pools of light, starting with a sun lamp, one of the default Blender sources, imitating the light placed infinitely far away with all rays going in parallel. The problem currently is that our HDRI sphere here is blocking all the sun rays emanating from outside. To fix it, we're gonna uncheck the shadow rays visibility, allowing the external light to pass through the sphere. So here comes the sun, coming in from roughly the same direction as our rim light. To make it feel like the real sun, its power should be changed to a really dramatic amount. I'm switching it to 50 here. To nail down the right temperature, the blackbody node could come in handy. The higher the temperature, the cooler is the color. The evening color would be around 3500 Kelvin to 5200 Kelvin for a daylight tone. I think I'll go with a lower temperature though to capture a sunset feel. The colorization of light sources also depend on the white balance control in post-processing, but that's something we'll explore a bit later. So far so good, we've got the evening sun blasting out and washing everything it touches out. That's not so good. It would be much better to go from light to dark compositionally. What could be done about it? One of the easier ways, even laid-back ways to break up the beam is to block a part of it. Often a simple plane would do. Actually, just like in the first chapter of this course, we broke up the sun shaft with a bunch of planes. We can repeat it here in a slightly more advanced way. I'm moving a plane like this, so it blocks the sun completely and is perpendicular to the sun rays. Now we need to punch a hole in it, or generate some kind of a slit. We can do it procedurally with the help of the Boolean operation. I'm adding a cube here from the Shift-A menu and copying the plane's rotation to line it up nicely with the plane. This will be our Boolean cutout object. Imagine that we'll make a hole shaped like this object in our plane blocker. Selecting the plane now, I'm opening the modifiers tab and dropping in the Boolean modifier. The mode should be set to difference, and now we can just pick the cube to create a hole. We don't see the effect just yet, as the cube should be set to transparent, so I'm jumping over to the object settings to switch the display type to bounds. And then unticking the shadow checkbox to remove it from cycles as well. Ta-da! Here it is, our procedural slit that can be used to shape the light beam. Isn't that cool? I don't want the hotspot to cover the area way too large. Just a little pool of light will be enough, maybe something like that. Just trying to eyeball a good contrast. Oop. That's how we can block the part of light from our sun lamp to leave just a small puddle. The puddle of the higher intensity and contrast. Sweet, sweet contrast. Now let me quickly go through yet another way of breaking up this light. In filmmaking it is called light gobo or light cutout, basically a stencil placed in front of the lamp that creates a shadow pattern. I'm going to use this tree cutout taken from our project files, that can be downloaded obviously. It is nothing more than a texture mapped onto a 2D plane. A texture with a tree shadow. That goes into the alpha, or transparency of the shader. A really simple gobo indeed. Okay, we also have a color ramp here to fine-tune the edges contrast. And that's it. I'm gonna Ctrl-C to copy this plane to buffer. Then heading back over to the robo scene, I'm gonna press Ctrl-V to paste it. It could be tricky to catch the shadow, so take your time. It could be a really tedious task to find the right placement for this gobo to cast the shadows onto what you like. The harshness of the projected shadows, by the way, can be fine-tuned in the sun lamp settings by changing the angle. 0 meaning the super well-defined shadows. I'm gonna keep it like that for tweaking the shadow placement. It is convenient. It definitely looks way too noisy at the moment. Oh gosh. But you got the point. Just trying to break things up. Okay, let's reblur it a bit. If you need to shift the edge, or let's say to grow or shrink the shadow, you can do it via the color ramp in the tree material. Something like that, anyway. It gives the impression that the warehouse got the hole in the roof and some overgrowth, so that's how our lighting gives hints about the location. It is very interesting, I think. So that was the light gobo technique and how it can be recreated in Blender. With all that in mind, I'll show yet another cool technique for dappled light, that is... we'll see what it is in just a moment. Where's my coffee when I need it? That's a scandal. A cool little feature that may help us to create cool sunbeams is the area light spread that has been recently added to Blender. It's not much better or worse than a good old sun lamp, but it is worth a try for sure. It can be found in the area light settings, as we remember for sure. First, let's give it a proper intensity and temperature though. I'm heading over to the light settings. And let's see how far we can push it to make it look believable. First, let me give it a warmer color though. Something like that. Okay, so what about 8K watts there? Probably a bit too much. How about 4K? Yup, hot enough to be believable. I imagine that by the contrast to the darker warehouse room tone, the sun would look really terribly bright. This actually makes perfect sense. So, the lower values of the spread should make the beam really focused and tight. It reminds me of Fresnel lenses used on the real lamps to focus the beam to simulate the sun. The more filmic analogies, the better, obviously. Now you can see that I'm just trying to nail the placement of the light pool, which made me realize out of a sudden that the power can still be a little bit too high. So I'm cranking it down all the way to 80 watts. That is quite a dramatic drop, but I'm sure we will be able to tweak it anytime. Shift F3 should bring us into the shader editor, where we can check Use Nodes and play with the light texture. I'll go ahead and drop the noise texture there to give us that random texture for our light. Plugging it into the strength input doesn't change much. It should be contrasted for this to work, so where is our color ramp? Where is it when we need it? Squeezing the flags closer to the mid-range should make the noise texture more defined, and that's exactly what we need. Now, when the shadow pattern revealed itself, another way of controlling it is to move the light around, namely to slide it closer or further away. It is an interesting feature of this type of light, so let me show it to you really quickly. I'm pressing G to move and then Z twice to move it on the local Z axis. And watch how the pattern changes. Fascinating. The closer the light, the sharper the pattern. So that was yet another technique for dappled light. Finally, I'll just copy this light once more to create another pool of light closer to the shoulder. Cool. Then I usually spend like half an hour meticulously moving these accent lights around to find that best combination. You know how it goes. By softening this light in the process, I've broken the light ratio, I think. It no longer looks like a powerful light source, so the final tweak I'm going to do for these two lamps is multiply their strength considerably. So we have tweaked it at last. Basically, I'm multiplying it by a factor of 10. So that is what we've got, a few pools of light broken up nicely, creating much needed contrast of light and dark, and light and dark and light and dark on top of our 3-point lighting base.